All right. Time for the tomfoolery to begin.
2, 3, 4. This ain't no hocus pocus. This ain't no plague of locusts. It's just Brock and Ryan trying to talk about focus.
Take it to the streets, people.
Thank you.
Nicely done. Does that qualify as church funny?
Is it church funny to talk about plagues of locusts? There's a disturbance right now, but we're about to have a special guest for this podcast.
This podcast is not above exploiting adorable children. Yes, it's so cute. I can't even take it. Hi, Naomi. I don't know, Brian. What do we even need to say? Let's just do close-ups.
just 15 minutes of close-ups on Naomi.
Highest rated podcast.
5,000 views.
Yeah. Naomi has those pretty Cagno blue eyes, though, I think. Let me see. Yeah. Those go back a many generation. I know how far back they go.
Yeah.
That's why the Cagnos get away with all that shenanigans, because of those blues.
Yes.
That's
how I get
the
away
truth.
with it. That's how I got this
You
job.
just disrespect society and they just keep on taking
That's how
it.
I get away with what I do on Sunday mornings. You think I'm funny. Thank you. I don't need the rest of you. You want to say anything to the people out there?
You are just adorable. You're smiling. It is very safe to say anything that happens after this is going to be straight into the sewer pipe.
Can we
Nobody
track when people stop watching the video?
Yeah.
It's going to be right
It's
after
going to be
this
right about now.
And I used to care what people thought about me until about 4 months ago. I used to just be like, my happiness would rise and fall by what Brock would say about my clothes. It would rise and fall by what you would say about my, the funny announcement I gave in church.
Yeah, but all that's gone.
See those eyes looking up at you, and it all washes away.
That's
and
so
you're like,
true.
I just look at this little baby. I'm like, man, there is a lot of truth to this. Actually,
There is.
I love you guys, but and you too, Brock. I love you.
Uh-huh.
But that love has been relativized significantly.
I
by
love that,
little
dude.
girl.
That's some real talk right there.
I won't do this job forever, but Lord willing, I will be her dad for a long time. And
He's off the markets, ladies. It's unfortunate for you because that's some solid gold right there. Where
It's
were
all
you? Where
true.
were you with
It's all
those gems
true.
when you were single?
This
This is plead the fifth.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So real quick, babies have this weird thing going on where they have these piercing eyes, and I feel insecure a little bit when they look at me because they look like they're staring right into the true you, and they're like, "I
Yeah.
know this racket
Do
you got
you
going on."
See, I think about this a lot. I know scientifically
That
that
can't be the
she's
case.
not that smart to this point. That
She's not like analyzing you, judging
cognitively, she's just mostly still in like the poop, food, dad. That's kind of it, right? For her
what
brain.
science and the doctors are telling us. But
I know, but there's a look in her eyes where I'm like, it's as if she's the one in this situation that knows
Yes.
everything. And
I
like,
feel that 100%.
you felt this.
Big
like
time.
when I look at my daughter, I'm like, she's looking at us adults like, when are they going to figure out? You just have to remind yourself that
This is just
they're
gas.
actually really dumb. Yeah.
Yeah, this is gas. I can take this person psychologically and intellectually, right?
Yeah. Let's
Maybe.
bust out Trivial Pursuit right now. And own
See who's boss. I'm glad I'm not alone on that because I'm not even kidding about that.
Yeah,
I would
that's
look
an
at my
interesting
kid, and my kid had a particularly judgmental, like forehead area where he would just.
Grant
give me-
has like a default like furrowed brow. Yeah.
like, Come on, man.
Is this
Seriously.
it? This is what you got for me
Yeah,
right
this
now?
is my world and you're living in it. Enough of that idiocy. Hey, my man Ryan delivered another sermon on Sunday.
It definitely was a sermon.
People. Again, huge topic.
So we talked about what God was doing in the Old Testament, what his plan was, etc. But I think for a lot of people, their brains still kind of go back to the salvation question. And
Yeah.
weren't sure how to tie the Old Testament story into that.
Right.
So some people were asking like, was Adam saved, or Abraham, or any number of these Old Testament characters? Like,
Right.
and there's certainly a perception that hopefully I didn't explicitly try to refute this in the sermon, but hopefully it implicitly did. A perception of the Old Testament that it was kind of one big object lesson in the fact that like humans can't do it on their own, that
Right.
they're up a creek without
Right.
God, and until Jesus comes, right? And so there's this sense that everyone in the Old Testament then is just like
Crash test dummy. But
yeah. They're just there's an object lesson for us in why you can't earn your own salvation or whatever. And some of this is reinforced when you read like Dante's Inferno, which is heavily influential for us,
right.
where the first level of hell was populated by all the people in the Old Testament. And the first thing Jesus did was like when he,
Right.
rent hell asunder or whatever, was like freed all those
We
people
might
and like sent them up to heaven.
populist words are like Hades and all this stuff that
So something I didn't really get a chance to get into is the fact that in the Old Testament, I believe it's possible, like saving faith was a possibility in some sense.
it's interesting.
And this would be based on Hebrews 11, where you have kind of like they're recounting all the different Old Testament people and saying all these people like had faith in God, but like none of them received what was promised. They looked ahead to the coming of Christ. They look forward to this day and to this thing that we, the first century church at that time, and then now us also, or enjoy this relationship with Christ, and they look forward to the coming of that Messiah. But it seems like they looked forward to it in such a way that like it was possible to be like a true believer in the God that they knew at that time.
I agree.
God as revealed in the Old Testament. So did the law save them? No. Like Paul says, the law brings sin, brings knowledge of sin, and leaves people condemned in their sins. But it seems like they could know God in the Old Testament in a way that to which when like David dies,
I agree.
God wouldn't say to him, sorry, you should have been born 1,000 years later, to try and make clear that the Old Testament story is continuous with the New Testament story.
You used this so well in the sermon. The goal and the mission and God's purpose for the Israelites, the Jewish people, was not for them to inherit like a superhero status and then to walk around peacock-like and, we're the chosen one, but was to fulfill a mission. And I liked how you brought that whole concept in, that the covenant made with them was, they didn't understand the point of it. They didn't understand. That was really, really cool and real relevant to my life right now. And I've been doing a lot of personal reading about that. But the interesting thing then is Jesus comes along and mirrors some of that, but fulfills it and understands the point. I love how relevant the Jewish experience and how they carry that special relationship with God and how they internalize that blessing. They internalize what God intends that to be in many ways that we do today, where we have salvation. And it's not so that we stamp a train ticket for the great last days. It's to move his kingdom forward. It's that salvation and that grace, and that we're redeemed for a mission and a purpose. I love the analogy there, and I love that you brought that in, because it really makes the Old Testament relevant. It really did for me.
That's good to hear, and that would be the goal. Is that, when Jesus comes and is bringing the Sermon on the Mount, etc., he's clarifying, expanding upon, revealing the true meaning of like what they had been given in the Old Testament. And it's probably worth noting, they still don't get it.
Right.
Until like the Holy Spirit comes and like enables people to really like receive and know and understand the truth that God's bringing to them. So there's that sense in which like, I mean, even Jesus' ministry didn't exactly go well. I mean, people were still confounded by the things he was saying, misunderstanding.
Look, when you were bringing that into the sermon, I don't even know if you realized how much of a bridge that is. If you want to study the Old Testament and find relevancy, do we not carry the exact same burden maybe with our own salvation? And maybe even err, we don't realize that God is using this to his purpose.
And we don't really ask that. We don't care about that. You brought this up during the first service at the end, and then I kind of seized on it in the second service sermon. But this idea of understanding salvation just as punching your ticket to heaven. And we want to counterbalance that with saying salvation is about a mission you have to play here. And I think we would want to say to everyone out there, you don't have to choose between those. And that's a problem, is so often like I think conservative churches have tended towards just emphasizing the salvation aspects. Liberal churches, probably in response to liberal churches in the early 20th century that were all like about the here and now and the world
Right,
to the point
right.
where we kind of
That's a good point.
stopped
Yeah.
even talking about heaven or salvation. Salvation is absolutely about
Yes,
our
that's
final
well said.
destination with God, but we're not there yet. And just as Paul said, for Paul, like if Paul was the only person Paul had to think about, then he says, well, why
Yes.
don't I just go now?
Yes.
And he says, but I'm here
That
still.
question is answered right
I'm
there.
but
Right.
he answers it and says, I'm here now for your sake. And by the same token, when we understand salvation that way, first it makes more sense of the Old Testament, because the Old Testament's very
Yes.
much nitty gritty here and now.
Yes.
But it makes sense then of what we should, why we should be living the kind of life we ought to be living, why the law matters to us now today
Yes.
still.
And this is not a small thing, because this sets in motion behavior and lifestyle. This thought of what you were saved to do, and it sets you on purpose and mission. For so long in my lifetime, Christianity has not been real or lived in a way that is infectious, the way that we're taught Jesus' life was lived. I think largely because of this, because we don't recognize the reason we are redeemed. When I grew up, all of the onus was on, say this line, be redeemed, or be saved, rather. That was the language, be saved,
Mm-hmm.
born again. But for what? Right? For what is the question that we're after there. And
There was a major early 20th century, the social gospel thing, where the gospel is boiled down just to make your communities a better place. That's what Jesus would do. Jesus,
right.
it not even was necessarily divine, or he didn't raise from the dead,
Do-goodism.
etc. Do-goodism.
Yeah.
And that legacy has played out in certain church traditions to this day. And, the pendulum swings the other direction, and Billy Graham adds a lot of obvious momentum to that.
Right.
And it's a good swing
It is.
insofar as the gospel is about sin and about salvation and about a divine Jesus,
Right.
who reveals to us who God is, and having a personal relationship with him brings all those elements back to the fore for evangelical Christianity.
And possibly swings all the way to like cheapening grace.
Yes,
would be
because for a long time I think these elements of what we're supposed to be doing in our communities and in the world now, that reeks of the social gospel, and so we swing away from it as far as we can.
Right. Which sounds like human beings to me. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and now we're swinging back the other way probably
Right.
again. This is from a Disney Channel show called Out of the Box that I used to watch when I was a child. So long, farewell to you, my friends. Goodbye for now, until we meet again. It's been great to play and sing together in the box, but now it's that part doesn't translate as well. Time to say goodbye.
Ooh, and the nice B.
So long, farewell to you, my friends. Goodbye for now, until we meet again.
From our hearts to yours.
I'm not doing that.
Is this Disney Channel Even Steven era? Or
Oh, yeah, this
Disney
is
Channel,
late
Carly?
90s, early
Okay,
2000s.
because
There's
now
this-
it's like
We call it the That's So Ravencliff, where just
Yes.
we're here, we're rocking, and then
there it is. Where are you gonna get that anywhere else? Nowhere.
Here's looking at you, two people that get to the end of this podcast.
Peace out.
Seriously, who's gonna watch this whole thing?